Hey everyone, this is Mario again, coming at you with another review, and it's yet another entry in Monster Fest. Today's review is a sequel to the review you probably saw uploaded right before this, because like I've mentioned in a couple of these videos, I'm probably not going to upload these in the order that I recorded them. I'm going to try to, but I'm not going to fully do it. Anyway, the film is a sequel to the last film from the 70s. This sequel's from the late 80s, 88 to be specific. Once again, it's directed by Don Coscarelli, and it once again stars Angus Scrimm as our villain. It, of course, is Phantasm 2, sometimes known as Phantasm 2, The Ball is Back, which that is its tagline. I like that tagline. The Ball is Back. You know, those things are very famous. Now, unlike the original, which if I remember correctly was independently distributed, this one was distributed by Universal Pictures, ironically. Hey! You two! Quit it! And it had a $3 million budget, which is the highest budget out of all the Phantasm movies, because the first one and the third one only had less than $1 million, which for the third one I haven't seen in a while, but I was like, really, this is less than $1 million? Wow. But this one, you could really tell it had that budget. It's the largest of the Phantasm budgets, but ironically, apparently it's the lowest of any Universal production from the 80s, which makes you wonder what their highest one was. Hey, excuse me for a minute while I get the... Sorry about that. Those dogs really get riled up when they're playing, so I had to get them out of here. I didn't want them to cause too much noise in the background, but anyway, I believe I was at the budget. Now, one thing is that this movie does not include the entire original cast from the first movie, as Bill Thornbury and his character do not appear in this film, though they appear in the next film. And, of course, Michael Baldwin was replaced by James LeGros. And the reason for that is that originally Universal actually wanted Don to replace the two lead actors with more recognizable actors. When I think of that, for some reason I think of Bruce Campbell for some reason. I don't know, maybe because of similar genre or something. I don't know. I don't know, it just comes to mind. Anyway, Don was forced to audition Michael Baldwin and Reggie Bannister. Because of this, he got a concession, which was he could keep one of the actors, but he had to replace the other. So he chose to replace Michael Baldwin and keep Reggie, which I have to say that was probably the best move, because I cannot think of anyone else playing Reggie. Michael, the character of Mike, not so much. I could see someone else playing him, but so I can understand why Michael Baldwin was kind of upset at this. I mean, even referring to Phantasm 2 and the Phantasm 3 commentary is a film that shan't be named, but I do like LeGros. But I haven't seen 3 in a while, so I can't comment on Michael Baldwin's performance in that movie, but I did like him in the first movie, as you guys know. Now, now the movie picks up a little bit after the events of the previous movie. I mean, we see that in the flashback, the Tall Man and his minions attempting to abduct Mike after the ending of the first movie. And of course, Reggie managed to save the day by turning on the gas, getting Mike out of there, and blowing up his house. 6 years later, we're introduced to a new character named Liz Reynolds, which her appearance in the movie is another one of the mandates by Universal, is that they have to include a love interest in the movie. So, with that, I'll get to something about that if I get to Phantasm 3 during this, but I actually do like her character, but it's no big loss what happens to her, at least with me. It's kind of upsetting that what happens to her so quickly, but I can understand why they did it. But anyway, Liz Reynolds, she's a young woman, and apparently she has a psychic bond with Mike, which they never fully explain it, but they do say it's one of the reasons why the Tall Man wants them both, because they have something special about him. Maybe it's as they put it, they're able to see past his facade. Anyway, she's having nightmares about both Mike and the Tall Man. And of course, after she awakens from him, she puts him in her dream journal, and the dream journal is basically helps recap the first movie. Now, apparently, in the 6 years since the events of the first movie, Mike has been institutionalized because they say he's been delusional. And of course, Mike is having these dreams as well, so he decides he can no longer ignore them, and he fakes his recovery in order to obtain a doctor's release, which... This is the one thing about the movie I'm wondering, wow, he really did do it very quickly, because think of it, after 6 years, they'd probably know how the guy acts. So you would think that the doctor would probably be like Dr. Silverman from Terminator, like, I know you're faking. but maybe they figured that they finally got through to him and they decided to send him home and let's see if it actually works, because he wasn't doing anything violent, at least that we know of, like Sarah Connor was, so maybe that's the reason why. Maybe I'm just overthinking it, I don't know. Anyway, at night, Mike returns to Morningside Cemetery to exhume bodies, and there he's interrupted by Reggie, and he actually sees that there are empty coffins. They go home, Reggie's family is gone. That's all I'm going to state about it, just gone. So Reggie and Mike decide to track down the tall man and put an end to him, and as they go, they find empty graveyards and stuff, and of course they go to a warehouse and get tools, in which Reggie constructs one of my favorite weapons of all time, the 4-barreled shotgun. Now, if they put that in a Resident Evil game, that would kick ass. Hey, Nemesis, eat it! Die, you zombies! That would be epic. Or imagine if they put it in a Silent Hill game. Of course, you'd have to have limited ammo for it, but imagine that. Hey, Pyramid Head, suck on this! I know, I'm just thinking of fan stuff, but you gotta admit that would be cool. It'd be cool if they did a Phantasm video game if done right, but anyway. Eventually, our main characters meet, and it's now up to all of them to stop the tall man once and for all. Now, I think I should talk about how the film is shot. How the film is shot, it's a little bit more accessible than the first movie. I mean, if you watch the first movie and you know what happens, but it's kind of confusing for you to watch, you'll probably get more into this sequel. And I have to say, in all honesty, even though I enjoy the first movie, I do enjoy the sequel a little bit more. Like I said, it's more accessible, and I do like it has a little bit of action in it, whereas the first one didn't really have much action. Plus, I like the tall man's comeuppance a little bit better, but I'll get to that later. How Don shot the movie I thought was a little bit better, did better camera angles. Also, you could tell that this movie actually had an actual budget behind it, the way he shot it. Practical effects used perfectly. I mean, if a movie like this was made nowadays with that budget, it'd probably have crappy CGI like you'd see on, the Sci-Fi Channel. But here, there's no CGI, excuse me. If there is, it's like minimal, like with minimal on the balls, but it's all practical, and the balls moving, the silver spears moving worked very well. The new gold one I thought was done very well, especially when we get to see its ability. Drilling. Busting through doors. And of course the tall man, the fake head when he has the thing coming out of him. It's an obvious animatronic, but I miss stuff like that nowadays. Nowadays it'd be an obvious CGI thing, which I prefer when it's actually in front of the camera, as you guys know. Now the acting, LaGrosse, like I said, he does a pretty good job as Mike. You wouldn't know it's obviously you can tell it's a different actor, but you wouldn't think anything's amiss. I mean, we haven't seen Mike as an adult before this, so he's been institutionalized. Reggie, he's always fun as the character of Reggie. It's great to see him again, especially with the shotgun. One of my favorite scenes involving him is when he's fighting the one digger, and then they get into a chainsaw fight. He pulls out the little chainsaw. He's like, yeah, he basically has a look. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna take you. The guy pulls out the other one, it's a bigger chainsaw, and just the look on his face, he's like, without saying anything, he's like, oh, shit. I just love the way his face slowly dawns at him, and then how the fight goes on. I thought was funny. And then, of course, when they're talking about the hitchhiker, I like Mike's line to him, Reggie, you're thinking with the wrong head. It's not a look like that makes this movie fun. Paula Irvine, Irvine as Liz Reynolds. I thought she did a pretty good job. Nothing, where I'm like, oh my god, this is the greatest performance I've ever seen in my life. But I thought it was serviceable. This is probably one of her most well-known roles. She also appeared in the first season of Beverly Hills 90210. She was on Growing Pains as Laurie McNeil. She was also in the daytime drama Santa Barbara, but she retired from acting in '94, so she's been retired almost 20 years. Doesn't say why, but maybe she's doing other things. But it would be nice to see her return, like for every now and then for stuff. She's only 44. It's like, what can you retire from there? Maybe she want to do something else. But Samantha Phillips is the character Alchemy. Yes, that's her name, Alchemy. She kind of, even though it's not stated, she does kind of seem to me like she might be a goth girl, not like an overly goth one. You're like, okay, you're trying too hard, but you know what I mean. She did a good job. I liked her back and forth with Reggie, and I'm not going to spoil the plot point about her at the end, but I kind of saw it coming a little bit, but maybe it's because I figured it was going to have an ending kind of like the first one, which I know that the endings are probably the weakest parts of the first three movies, but like I said, I don't mind them, but I know some people, like I know Matt's not a big fan of him. I almost said Mike. I don't know if Mike is, but I know Matt's not a big fan of him, which as he stated in his reviews of the films. But he does enjoy the first 3 films, if I remember right. Just not the endings. But the endings don't ruin them for me. It's not like Insidious. I'm not afraid of you, or the movie I reviewed not that long ago, The Devil Inside. Watch out! Or even though I haven't seen it, or even Last Exorcism. Rosemary's Baby Time! Kenneth Tiger, yes, that's his last name, Tiger, as Father Myers? Or Myers? Yeah, it's Myers. I thought he did a pretty good job. He really drives home the sense that even though he is a man of God, he's seen things that he just cannot take. Like, when he's drinking, you can really tell that he's trying to drown out the stuff. And when he does desecrate the body, when he asks for forgiveness, you can tell that even though he knows what he's doing could be considered sacrilege, he's doing it to save the person. Granted, it doesn't work, but you can tell he's doing it for the best, doing it with the best intentions. But you know what they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But I do like it. And then his little confrontation with the tall man. Who are you to question God's servant? Which leads into my next thing. Angus Grimm, once again, is a tall man. Perfect. He was good in the first movie. Here, he has a little bit more stuff to do, and he has one of my favorite lines in the movie. You think that when you die, you go to heaven. You come to us. And then, of course, the one we see in the trailer. No, it's not. And then, of course, the always popular boy. And the one thing I like about this movie, it shows just how badass the tall man is. He has one of his own weapons used against him. He just pulls it out and crushes it like it was nothing. And of course, he has an epic comeuppance. I mean, the first movie, he just falls in a hole. Not really epic. Granted, they didn't really have much to destroy him with, but here, they get him with acid. I'm not going to spoil how, but it's just a good comeuppance. And also, from what I remember of the third movie, I don't mind how he comes back. That's just me. The rest of the actors, they do pretty good jobs for the small parts they have. And like I said before, you can see the money here was utilized well, all 3 million of it. It's a movie where you're like, 3 million? Yeah, I can see it. It's all there. And it only made about a little over 7 million, so it may double its budget. But I don't know how much the film was advertised, so I'll say it probably was a minor hit, which is probably why Universal with the third film said, we'll only distribute it. You can make the movie, but we'll distribute it for you. Here, they paid for it and distributed it. But I can understand why, but it's like, you only paid $3 million. You could have coughed up that money for them again, you cheap bastards. Especially since since that one was going direct to video, punks. But I have to say, this is probably my favorite of the Phantasm films. Yeah, it probably is, because I remember having first viewing, I had a much funner time with this movie than the next one, even though the third movie does have some interesting stuff. My rating for Phantasm 2, 4.5 out of 5 stars. If you are a fan of the first movie, I say definitely give this one a watch.